We begin the current Daf in Mesechta Bava Kama Daf Chaf. We begin on the top line of the Amid. The Gemara continues this discussion of a Mishnah that we started on the bottom of the previous Amid regarding Ketzad Hashem Moedes. We're discussing the mazik of Shein, which Shein is Hano Lazekoi, and it's what is normal for the animal to eat. Because if it's not normal for the animal to eat, then actually it could be part of Karen because of it being Mishuna. And the Gemara continues qualifying these halachas. Shiur goes because the Chazkel turned to Daf Chaim. Today's daf should be Yisrael and throughout the entire world. So we're discussing today's daf are this idea of our Mishnah of Shemu Edes Lechel Arorla. The Shein is considered muad, meaning it pays nezik shalom from the get-go to eat that which is fit for it. The halacha of Shem b'shus haram, which we know we've said many times this Masechta already. It says in the pasuk of Bir b'stei acher that it's only liability if it's in the Sadeh HaNizik, but in Shus Haram it's going to be potter. The Gemara, however, has some interesting cases that you'll actually be in the street, but you'll actually be chayiv. How's that possible? Al gabe chaverta, if it's on top of the other animal, which that animal is the person's private domain, and hence, although the animal might be eating in Rishus Harab, you might be chayiv. And also misgalgal v'asi, if let's say it rolled from one area to another area, even though it started in one place, you might end up being liable, even though there is a part of the story taking place in Rishus Harab. There could be a case where, as the Gemara will explain, that you're not going to pay mashazeka, as we had said, but rather, as our previous Mishnah qualified, you'll pay just the benefit that you had, not what the actual damage is. The Gemara gets into a discussion regarding paying for hana, such as hadar b'chatzar chaverish lemedaitar, which is that this is the famous terminology of zenen b'zolechasar, zenen b'zechasar, whatever. But the point is that the person, really, you're not damaging him, but there will still be a liability for your payment when you're living in the person's property without his awareness. And also the halachic category of hamashana v'achar v'shinaba. If someone did something abnormal, and then someone did something abnormal to the person doing something abnormal, that the second person is going to be exempt because you shouldn't have done that crazy thing. Now that I'm doing the crazy thing to you, that is going to be an exemption. So begin the current Daf Chaf. We had mentioned again in the Mishnah, we said a person's liability to pay full compensation for the food eaten by his animal is limited to food that's suitable for its needs. If it eats fruits and vegetables, but if it's achlik susekalim, it's going to pay only chatzinezik because that's actually classified as karen and only pays half the damages. When do we say that? B'shus nizik, it says the Mishnah b'shus ram, you're going to be pater. And the Gemara had said that it says two times the terminology, shein the behema, shein the chaya. The term behema can refer to chayis as well. So the Gemara gave examples of normal eating. If a chaya goes into the chatzah nizik, it's tirfa behema achla basa, then you pay nezik sham. Whatever's not orchei and he eats it only in the pressing situation, that also be considered achila. For example, let's say a parah shachal sa'ara and chamar shachal kashinan. We said this on the bottom of the previous amid. You'll pay nezik sham for those cases. Which the Gemara now gets into a discussion on the top of the Amid, another story the Gemara brings to qualify if something is urche, if it's the norm to be qualified as shein. Hahu barcha, there was this goat, the chaza lifta, that saw a turnip, apuma dedana, on the lip of a barrel. Sarich, so he climbed up, silik, ochla lifta, he ate the turnip, and v'tavel dedana, by going up over there, he broke the barrel. Rabbi said, for the turnip and for the barrel, you're chayv nezik shalom. My time, what's the reason? So Gemara explains. Even the orchel lift, and this is really very much related to the story we had mentioned previously, the last story at the end of the Amid, from the previous Amid, that the animal ate the bread and the basket. We had asked, you should be chayiv nezik shalom in the basket too, because it's normal to chew the basket when you're chewing the food. So we said, okay, it happened at different times. But here the Gemara says the principle that, since it's normal to eat the bread, eat the turnip, it's also normal for it to climb up on it and therefore break it. And therefore that barrel breaking is going to be qualified as the mazik of regel. Also, al kapanim is not going to be karen, and therefore you're going to be chayiv nezik shalom. Continues the Gemara, Amma Ilfa. Ilfa says that behema b'shus rab. So this where it gets interesting. You have an animal, as we had said before, the mazik of shein is only chayiv b'shus hanizik, and you pater b'shus harab. And now the Gemara is going to say you have to know how to qualify b'shus harab and b'shus hanizik. If you have an animal in the street, It stretched out its neck. Now, its fellow animal has stuff on its back, like this picture beautifully illustrates. I don't know what he's eating, but he's eating something off the back of the other animal. Chayeves, even though it's in the street, the owner of the animal is going to be liable. My timer. I thought that you're part of Rishas Rab. No, says the Gemara, says Ilfa, Gabi Chaverta, the back of its friend, is like the victim's courtyard. It's his Rishus. It's Bir B'Ste'acher. It's not a vart of the street and someone's private property that you no trespassing. I mean, there's also no trespass. It's a person's property. And therefore, it says Ilfa, you're going to be chayiv nezek shalim for shein. Now, it says Gemara, let's say we could support him in the following brisa. The brisa says, but let's say someone had his bag, his box, that was hanging over his back. And then the animal stretched out its neck and ate from him. Chayeves, so the owner of the animal is going to be liable. You see, although it's shein and it's in the street, you see, says the brisa, you're going to be chayev, obviously, because although shein in regel is pater in Rishas Rabim, but on someone's back, it's his own private property. Says no, that brisa wouldn't be a raya, because Kadam Rabbi, you could say like Rabbi said, b'koifetzes, that we're talking about when the animal jumped and ate on his neck, where it's not normal for the animal to do that. That's a telada of Karen. Karen is chayiv in Rishas Rab, but as Rashi explains, it won't be chayiv chatzi nezik. Hachanami b'kafetza, we could say that the same thing would be over here also, that the animal jumped on top of the back, and therefore that's how it ate from the backs that he had, and that's why he chayiv because of Karen. But maybe for shein, it would not be considered as chatzar nezik in the street, and therefore maybe you would be pater for shein. And the Gemara says vechit in the Rava, meaning we're trying to say that what Rava says elsewhere, that it's where the animal jumped. So too you could say that the brisa over here is also where it says the animal's chayiv for eating on the back of this person, his box that he had that's hanging over his shoulder, that it's when he jumped. So vechit in the Rava, where was Rava's teaching on? Ahodam Rabbi Shia. They're teaching of Rabbi Shia behema b'shas ram. They have an animal in the street. If it was walking and eating, it's going to be exempt. If it was standing and eating, the owner of the animal is going to be liable. So the question was, I don't understand. What's the difference if it's walking and eating that you're going to be pater because the orchehu that's normal for the animal, meaning orche, meaning it makes a regel, makes it shein, it's normal for it to eat in the street, and then you're going to be pater. If it stands also orchehu, it's normal for the animal to stand and to eat. And if that's the case, so why are you going to be chayiv for eating in the street if the street is shein b'shas ram that you put it? That Amar Rabbi had said, Bikoifet says, he had said that we're talking about where the animal jumped. It's meshuna for an animal to jump. That makes it into keren. Keren b'shas ram is going to be chayiv. It's going to be chatzi nezik, but you're going to be chayiv, and that's what Rabbi said in that context. And I was saying maybe the brisa also be in that context, and if it wouldn't be a raya for what Ilf is trying to teach us, that you could have an animal's back being considered as Rosh HaNizik, even though it's the middle of the street. Now, continuing on this mazik of Shein, what is the following question? This is where Rashi explains the question. Miskalgul mahu. If it rolls, what's the halacha? Well, what's the case, says the Gemara? We're talking about where there's this pile of straw in a person's private property. The animal is in the street. And now it rolls it, and it comes from Rishus HaYachid, from the person's private property, to the street. What's the halacha? What's the question? So Rashi explains that do we go based on where the animal eats it, and it's eating in Rishus HaRam, the Bizmi Pater, or do we go based on where it took it from? Where it took it from the private property, and therefore it's going to be chayiv. When they took it, it wasn't a mazik. You're not chayiv for your animal stealing, just like you're not chayiv for your animal making a bar. You would be chayiv for your animal's eating. Your animal ate it in the street. In the street, it's a Rishus HaRam, you should be pater. Or no, you say no, where the animal started its eating from, it took it, which would be from the Rishus HaNizik, and maybe you would be chayiv. It says Rashi, the same thing you could really ask if, let's say, the animal was in the Rishus HaNizik, but this pile of straw was in the Rishus HaRabim, and it rolled it from the street into the Rishus HaYachid. If you go based on where it's eating, you're going to be chayiv. If you go based on where it took it from, you're going to be potter. Says Rashi, you could have just easily, and some actually have the girsa the other way too.
Why do you have to come on the roll and why can't it just be this case? He's standing with Shus rather than eating it with Shus Yachid or vice versa.
No, but then wherever you
rolling at it.
because you would be eating it wherever your mouth is. That's where, and we'll see that later in the Masechta.
So
wherever
start with the simpler case.
No, but that would be an obvious case. Wherever you're eating it, that's where you're chayiv.
No,
Doesn't make it where you're standing. Your mouth. Where's your mouth going to be? Well, your mouth is where the food's going to be. Here, you're rolled. The animal's rolling it from where it is to another area. What would be the liability? Was it the point of contact, or is it when it ate it? Yeah, you right. Yeah, there's different. There's. It sounds like almost like busted mekar busted. Yes, that's in the Mishnah. That we'll see already how the Gemara qualifies those teachings. Right, so that's the halach of the Mishnah that we're going to see about this idea. But well, that's what we'll see. We'll see regarding that halacha. What? Right. Right, but that right. But now we're going on the ikr halacha of the mazik, which doesn't make the Torah says you're not chayiv. So what's the halacha? So Gemara says tashma it's being a raya. The Torah b'chir to the brisa. Masoi, a load, which the Gemara assumes is like a package full of barley. Miktsasa b'fnim and miktsasa b'chutz. So this sack of food is partly in the Rishus HaYachid and partly in the Rishus HaRambam. Some of it is inside, some of it is outside. Achla b'fnim says the Brayser B'chi like this: if it eats on the inside, chayebes, it's gonna be liable because that's in the Rishus HaNizik. Achla b'chutz eats on the outside, sure, it's gonna be exempt. That's what the Brayser says. Says the Gemara, my love isn't what Rabbi's Brayser is saying. It ate the whole sack of barley. So what is it saying? What you ate on the inside, what you ate on the outside? It means like this. It means misgalgul va'asi, meaning to say that if you rolled it totally inside and then you eat it, then you can be chayav. Fine motor skills. You can't get this picture out. Also, the pencil's in the way. And then if it rolls it outside, then you're going to be putter. Meaning the way the Gemara is translating it right now, what does it mean 8 inside, 8 outside? It's eating the whole sack. Meaning to say, where did it eat it? If it ate on the inside, chayav. If you haven't, I'd say putter. So one, like Rashi says, so what do you see from here? You go based on where you're eating it. Doesn't make a difference where it started out. So and that says the Gemara, it's not a raya. Aim, you could say, no, it's actually referring to which part. Ochla amasha b'fnim chayavis. What it ate, what was on the inside, you'll be chayav. Amasha b'chutz p'tura. And what was initially placed on the outside, you're going to be pater. And that which placed on the inside, you'll be chayav, because I could tell you go based on where you took it from. Whether the animal's on the inside or outside doesn't make a difference. It's where the package is. So you could say this. It's not a raya either way. You could say that it's based on where it took it from. Or Ibaysim, if you want, you could say that it's actually as you read the words, that if it ate it on the inside, you'll be chayav on the whole thing. If you ate it on the outside, you can be pot in the whole thing. And still you could not resolve this teaching that rolling it is significant. Because Kikam Reb Chia, you could say that when Reb Chia's case was bepsila de aspasasa. So what's this? Why is it called psila? It's just because it's long. It's called psila, like a wick, but it's like a stalk. It's like when we have this aspasasa, you have this load of shachas, which is they have these long leaves, and one end is in the inside, and one end is on the outside. Now, since this head, when you drag it, the other end comes with it, so it's like it's all laying in one area, meaning wherever it eats it. So therefore, we go after the animal. So there in the Chanami, that I can understand that's going to be like that. And the Bryce Rabbi has no relevance to the question we were asking. We were asking like something like barley, which is all the seeds are inside or outside, and when the animal eats it, that we would not go after the animal if it didn't roll it. So it's not really resolving the question of what we're actually talking about, because then, yeah, when you have a long stalk of grain, so the entire stalk gets dragged into the area where the animal begins to eat it. It's even though it starts in one area, the other end, but the animal, it's all connected. So it's where the animal's eating from it also. We wanted to know in regards to the barley, and that you won't be able to resolve. So that's two different rejections. How the Gemara says there's two different ways of interpreting it. Either the animal ate the food without moving it, so he's liable for food that was in Rishus Rabbim, the example food in Rishus Rabbim. We're talking about where it rolled it from there. Or, like we said, B'psil Des Basasa, that's very long, so it's all considered as where he is right away, and therefore you go based on the animal. But by barley, so then we wouldn't bring a raya, it wouldn't prove anything regarding the question of Reb Zera of do you go based on where it took it from, or would you go based on where it eats it? Now we continue on the Mishnah that we had said Kitzad Hashem Mu'edes, Lechel Sarola, Kitzad Behem Mu'edes, Lechel Peres Virakis. And then we said, but if Achla Ksus V'chulu, but if it ate garments or vessels, then the owner of the animal is only going to pay Chatzi Nezik. That said the Mishnah. Now, this is a machlek is how to translate these next words in the Mishnah. The Mishnah, after it said this halacha, which has two halachas in it, the normal shein and then the Mishuna Digger shein, which is Karen, we said, when did we say this teaching? Mishus HaNizik. It's only in the victim's property. Mishus Rabbim Potter, but in the public domain you can be Potter. Now, the easiest way of translating this, just as a way of clarification, would sound like it's going on the mazik of shein. Not the second halacha, that's Karen. Karen we know is Chayiv, Mishus Rabbim. So it would sound like this Bamad is going back on the previous, not on the second halacha. But that's a machlekes. Says the Gemara, hi. This qualification of Bamad, which case is this going on? So Rav says that this that the Mishnah says you can be Patim Mishus Rabbim is akulu, is on all the cases, even on the case of kalim and garments, because even though it's shinui and it's a tolad of Karen, so says the Gemara, my timer. So why would it be that you would be pater? Says the Gemara of the following teaching: Kol hamashana, whoever does something that's deviant, that does something abnormal, like here, where you left your clothing and your stuff in the street, so and then someone else does something abnormal to it. For example, the animal which eats it, which is also mishana, pater. The second one is going to be pater because of this klal of kol mishana ba'ach b'shina boy, where you did something unusual. Now, when someone does something unusual to you, the second one's going to be pater. Now, Shmuel Ami disagrees. Says no. We didn't learn this teaching only on the first teaching, which is the mazik of shein, and that you're pater in shusram. But if the animal ate garments and vessels, of course it's going to be chayv. It's keren. Keren is chayv. B'shus rab. Chinam Rishlakish says the Gemara. So too, Kama Amar Rishlakish Akulu. Rishlakish said like Rav that is going on all the cases, meaning the Mashana Ba'acha B'Shinaba. He agrees you're going to be pater like Rav, and Ba'az Rishlakish goes according to his reasoning mentioned elsewhere, which is Amar Rishlakish. Rishlakish says Shtei Paris B'Shus Rab. If you have two cows in the street, Achas Ravutza, Achas Malechas. One is laying down and one is walking. Bada Mahaleches Beravutza. Must be like the far side. They must have some but there's like the one who's walking kicks the guy who's laying down. So Patura. So the kicking animal is going to be pater. Now, even though in Rosh Hashanah you're chayiv for the mazik of Keren, but he's going to be pater. Why? Because whoever does something mishuna, like this guy is laying down, he's taking if he had a hammock, he would be in the hammock, but he's just laying down in the street. So, and then another animal comes and does something mishuna to him, he's going to be pater. Revutza b'malachas, but let's say the one laying down kicks the guy who's walking, kicks the cow who's walking, chayev, that one's going to be liable. So again, you see the principle of kol mashana ba'acha b'shina boy is pater, even though normally you'd be chayev for Karen. Which tries to discuss why he needed this case. Also, these two cases about what's normal, what's not normal.
One laying down is
The cow who's laying down, if he kicks the one that's walking, he's going to be chayev.
not normal for a cow to lay down.
In the street, right? That's right. That's what it seems like. I don't know if they have proper etiquette or whatever, but upon them, that's not the norm. Rabbi Yehuda, he says no. Lo yishana leperes v'yirakas. He was like Shmuel. We only said this teaching of being potter only regarding the fruits and the vegetables. But regarding the clothing and the garments, you can be chayiv even if the animal eats it in the street. Says the Gemara, Leslie the Resh Lakish. Shall we say Rabbi Yochanan does not agree to Resh Lakish even regarding the other teacher? I mean, we say Resh Lakish letamei. Resh Lakish has the halach of our Mishnah. He has the halach of the two cows, which again points out why you need both of them. But if Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with him regarding our Mishnah, shall we say he disagrees with him regarding the case of the two cows too? Because it's the same principle. It's about if an animal did something, if anyone did something abnormal, and then you have something abnormal done to him, that you're going to be potter. No, not necessarily. La'olam islay, that you could actually say that he holds of Shmuel of Rish Lakish's teaching that the cow that kicks the one that's laying is going to be potter. But in our Mishnah, ksus, clothing, avdi inchi, people do the manchi glimi umatapche. It makes sense that sometimes they'll put their shirts, their clothing, their stuff to air out in the street. So therefore, it's not so meshuna. So therefore, maybe that's why in our Mishnah he held that you can be chayiv if the animal eats it in Rosh Hashanah. But it sounds like it's so not normal for an animal to lay down in the street, and therefore that is considered kol mashana. And maybe Rabbi Yochanan would agree would be potter. So not necessarily would it be tali zebezeh. He might hold that principle, but he might hold that our Mishnah is not considered so meshuna to have your stuff airing out in the street. Now, the next halacha that people had mentioned just before is this idea of imenenis, that even when one does not pay damages for shein, but if he's getting benefit, mishalemes v'chulu, so then the owner of the cow has to pay mashanenes what he saved himself from having to feed his animal. So even though you potter, like we said, shein mishas rabim, but if you have benefit, you have to pay. Bakama, how much is this benefit? So it's a machlekes in the Gemara. Rabbi Amai says, Demei Amr, the value of straw, meaning if the animal, let's say, ate barley, the amount of it's full now, so you only pay the value that he would have had to give, let's say, straw for his animal. When he says that, I'm not feeding my animal barley, this animal gets no frills, he gets just the straw. So although he had a great meal from you, that high quality barley, you only have to pay the value of the straw. That's what it means. What's mashanenes? Rav Ami disagrees. He says no. You have to pay according to how much you would have had to pay for barley to feed it. If you wanted to feed a barley, the cheapest price that you can get. You're not going to get the market price because maybe this owner of this animal would not have paid for barley, but you get the cheapest price, which Daf Yomi explains. It's 2/3 of the price. Yeah, a person gets rock bottom prices, the cheapest. He goes wholesale, right? It doesn't get it from the market value. Yeah, but Lamaisa, you got barley, and sometimes you want to treat your animal for something like that. You won't be able to give just the value of straw, but you'll have to give you'll give the cheapest price on barley. Says Tanya was a Rabba, Tanya was a Rabba. This Mochlik is Rabba and Rabba. We have a price like either one of them. Tanya was a Rabba. We have a price that says like Rabba. Shimon Yechi Oime, he says, Ein Mishalemes El Demei Arma Buvad. You only pay the value of a pile of straw. That's how much it takes to fill up the animal's belly, and that's what now it had a great dinner from your barley. Still, you only have to give the straw. But Tanya was a Rabba. We have a price that says like Rabba too, because it says Imnenes Mishalemes Mashanenes. It says that if the animal benefited, if the owner of the animal benefited, you have to pay what the benefit was. The animal ate a kav, which is a measurement or 2 times of that measurement. You don't say you have to give the actual value of what it ate. We evaluate how much would a person be willing to feed his animal, or something that's fit for the animal, even though he's not accustomed to feeding it, let's say barley, he usually gives it just straw. He has to pay the value of the barley according to what a person would have that would give his animal, even though this guy's not accustomed to it. Now, therefore, since we evaluate by something that is fit for it, let's say if this is parenthetical to what we're discussing, but it has to be something that's rola. But again, not just straw, according to this shita, like we were saying, like Rava, that you have to give of the real animal food, like let's say barley, which is just the cheapest price. But therefore, since it has to at least be evaluate something that's only fit for it, If achal chitin, if it ate wheat, or something bad for it, where it's not having benefit, tura, then you're actually going to be totally exempt in Rosh Hashanah. That's not going to be qualified as mashanenis because it's actually harmful, and the owner is not benefiting, so he's not liable at all. Now, relating back to the teaching of our Mishnah, the Gemara introduces a very interesting sugya. Amalei Rav Chizl Rabbi Bava Kama says, "Lo haves gaben beurtot betchuma." You weren't with us yesterday, within the tchum that you were able to come. That in the Beis Medrash, that the boilon milim al yasa. We had asked very gishmaka question. Amalei says, "My milim al yasa. What was the gishmaka sugya I missed out? What was the grace shiur?" And they said like this: Hadar b'chatzach avera shleme daita. The guy is squatting. The guy's living in his friend's courtyard without the owner's awareness. This guy owns a property in Tom's River. And there's this guy's he never comes once a year in the summertime. This guy's living in this property. Question is, does he have to pay for the rent? Or does he not have to pay for the rent? That was the Geshmak Kasha we had yesterday in the shiur. You missed it. Okay, says the Gemara, what's the case talking about? What's the question? If it's a courtyard that's not usually rented out, it's not the type of property, and the maker, and this person who's living in the courtyard, he doesn't usually rent courtyards because he's always finds some other place to crash and to borrow, or he has another house himself. So this guy who owns the property, either it's, however you translate, either it's not the right type of property, or the owner is not the type of guy who rents out his properties. He's not going to rent it out anyway. And this guy who's squatting over there, he never paid a red cent, and he never paid for days, nights, sleep, whatever in a place. He always finds someone else to crash. So says the Gemara, that I don't understand. That's what's called zel loy nana. This guy who's squatting is not having any benefit because he can find a free night stay anywhere.
Even if it's zen, even if he is benefiting.
Yeah.
So it's zero chassid. That's.
But we'll see, because that was the halacha. Well, we'll see. Even if it's loy chassid, but you're having benefit off this guy's.
So what? When you read somebody's newspaper, it's not mafki. He's benefiting too, but it's zero chassid.
Well, see, when you rent out your apartment, right? Are you?
But you're saying that chassid, it's not.
No, in the Chadam, it doesn't usually do it. But so when you rent out, it's money, right? But it's money that he utilized from you. Your pool is worth $100 an hour. A guy comes skinny dipping and he leaves afterwards, and what happened? And you're okay with that? He utilized your property, even though you don't usually do it. It's like chaser, right? But this guy had hanav from you. In the Chanami, that's gonna be the discussion.
Is it totally on the thought of the owner, or is it totally on the robbing?
Right, that's right. In the Chanami, that's a good question. For now, the Gemara is assuming that it's not meant for renting. So if it's the owner, or if it's the it would sound like it's the owner, as we'll see in the Gemara's discussion, because it sounds like it would be dependent on him. So the Gemara says, let's first get out of the way this case. This case doesn't make sense at all, because this guy's not having benefit. This is not losing, because it's not meant for rent, and obviously going to be potter. So that can't be a question. So what are you going to say? A courtyard that's meant for renting. I mean, the guy rents it out. He has it. People call him up and he rents it out. And this guy, he rents. He has to pay. He has to pay for a sleeping place. He has no other place to crash. He used up every place he has already. So this is what's called zenena. This guy having benefit. He would have had to pay for the motel for $39.99. He would have to pay for a place. This guy's losing out. Why? Why is he losing out? Because his courtyard is designated for rental, and he would have rented it to someone else. What does that mean? So Tais explains, because as long as people see there's a car in the driveway, so people are not calling up the guy to say, "Hey, can we have your place for Shabbos?" Because Tais Bavar in the question says, "What you lose? You didn't lose. This guy's squatting. You didn't rent it out. It's not like the people came knocking on the door and they're opening up the kindi, see some guy over there with his stuff over there. So that's the taste bavarin, and he says, yeah, he's losing now by someone squatting over there because people think that there's someone over there. So therefore, that's obvious that you would have to pay. No, what's necessary is the middle case. We're talking about where that the guy doesn't rent out his house, but the maker. But the guy, he would have to pay if he wasn't squatting in your house. That's zenene v'zel loy chaser. This guy's having benefit, and this guy's not losing. What's halacha? So this is the question. This is the famous concept. So the Gemara says it. Motzi amalei kritam ma'chazoticha. Like you were saying before. What did it cause a loss for you? Anyways, you don't rent out your apartment. Makes a difference to you that I'm in your Florida Boca apartment and I'm there sleeping, for a few weeks. It makes a difference to you. There's not, I didn't harm anything. Didn't damage anything. And so therefore, says the Gemara to continue to Beis. Oh, Dilma Matzi Amma. Maybe you could tell him, no, it's honest, but you had benefit. It's not from my courtyard. You had to rent another place. So this is the interesting concept, which places Bavarans, which everyone knows. This question is probably niggling in the back of your brain. We know what's called Zenan and Vazel Chaser. It's Koifinais Amid Sedaim. What do you mean? This is Sedaim. You're not losing anything, and you have the paper, and you say, no, don't read my paper. Well, what's it off of your back? So says Taisus, no. Here it's different because he could have stopped him from the beginning from living in his house. It's not your regular Zen and V'zelei Chasa. In other words, someone could tell you also you have your apartment there in Florida. So you're not there this weekend. You finally came back. So what do you lose? Zen and V'zelei Chasa. Midas Adayim. Right? So it's Bavarin that's not the case. That it depends on if it's something that it's automatic versus something that you don't have to let in the first place. And here this guy is coming in inappropriately, so therefore that would not qualify for zanen v'zelei chasa. So akapan, fine, but the question is the guy chayav to pay or not? On the one hand, you say I didn't cause any loss to you, so why do I owe you anything? On the other hand, you said no, but you had a $500 benefit sleeping in my apartment where you had to pay for that to sleep, so you got to pay. That's the Gemara's question. So Malay said to him, that was your question you had yesterday? It's a Mishnah. What's the Mishnah? Hay Masnitin. Malay says, L'chita Shamashli, as we said before about the waters, when you serve me, then I'll tell you. So Shakal Sudre, so he took his kerchief, he wrapped his kerchief him. He folded his talis. Amalei said to him, this is the answer. We said in our Mishnah, Im Nenes, that even though you're putter for the mazik of Shein, Bishus Rabim, if you had a benefit, you have to pay what the benefit is. Obviously, you go based on the benefit. Even though there's no hezek, there's no mazik, you have to pay. So I didn't lose anything. I wouldn't rent out my house anyway, but I come and I heard, I see on the cameras, you were here, you had a whole party, you had a whole thing. You got to pay for the benefit. So Rabbi said, how interesting he says that there's no illness and there's no sensation of Gavr de Mordesai when you have a person that is master assistant, meaning how Hashem is on the side of Rabbi Kama, because the Avgav D'lei Dami, even though that question that was asked is not similar to Masnin to Allah Chav Mishnah, still Rav Chizda received it minei from him, and he didn't ask on him. Because, says Rava, what are you talking about? How did you resolve that question from the Mishnah? The case of the Mishnah is Zenene v'zechaser. What are you talking about? The guy is animal who ate the guy's food. He's not only having a nut, this guy is losing. By the question is Zenene v'zelei chasehu. But the question was asked was, this guy's getting, this is not losing. I didn't ruin anything. The linen is cleaner than when I came over here. Garnish that you lost. That was the question. Does the guy have to pay for spending the night over there? But what do you bring from our Mishnah? Our Mishnah is where it's chaser. It says the Gemara, Rabbi Kama, what was his excuse for trying to bring a raya from the Mishnah? Stam peiris b'shus rabim. Generally, when you have peiris in the street, afkure mafkalahu. You mafkir it. and therefore
It's the same gathering.
you didn't lose anything because ultimately it's going to get wasted anyway. Now, Tosha says this is the Gemara saying that he held that you mafkir. It's not totally because then even if you had benefit, you wouldn't have to pay because if it's hefker, you wouldn't have to pay. Says Tosha, no. What it means to say is he's miyayish from them because he thinks that for sure it's going to get ruined. That many people stepping in the street until it's not gonna, So therefore, that's why you have to pay mishalemes mashanenes, but it is considered. He held that is zenen v'zel lechaser also, and therefore he says that even though it's lechaser because the guy is mafkir or miyayish, like Tosha says, and still you have to pay. You see that it goes based on not what zeh chaser, it's based on zenena, and therefore yes, you do have to pay even though the guy is not losing anything because it goes based on the hana. So what? So you want it? So that's yeah. I mean, Tosha really makes it sound like, let's say that's where the liability is in the first place. That's the chaser. Let's say when a guy is staying in your apartment, that people are going to see that they're not going to rent from you because they see someone else is there already. You probably do have to consider future implications too, but it's hard to know how that plays into the actual hezek itself. Yeah, Bava Kama, that's what the Gemara is saying. That's what he wanted to bring a riot. The Gemara was asking. He says, "Well, it's not in the daima." He says, "No, it is daima." And you could see from our Mishnah as an end. But the Gemara continues trying to bring a raya because Lamaisa, our Mishnah's raya is not so conclusive, seemingly, as Rabbi pointed out. The Gemara says, "Let's bring a raya now from a Mishnah Bava Basra." Mishnah says a more complex case, as we'll see in Bava Basra, but Amakev Chaver Misholosh V'Chaysav. What happens is, as Rashi brings a picture over here, that Ruvain had 3 fields by the field of Shimon from the 3 sides of Shimon. So he surrounds him on 3 sides. And the Gadar, now this Ruvain who lives on the outside, he fenced Esrishayna. Only the first side, meaning the one that's closest to the field of Shimon, besides the partitions that he had between him and the rest of the other fields. And Vesashnia Vesashlishas. So like Rashi brings Kazeh, he brings a picture. So you see Reuben's fields are on the outside. So he obviously fenced around himself. But then he fenced inside of himself, which was between him and Shimon's fields. Says the Mishnah of Abbas, we don't obligate Shimon anything to pay and to share with the expenses of the fence. Mexico's not paying. Because what did he benefit him? Because anyways his field is open on the 4th side. But Haravias, if let's say Reuben had 4 fields, the 4 sides of Shimon, and he fenced it in, we would obligate Shimon to give his portion on the inner walls, which was between him and Reuben. Okay. Says the Gemara, Shmamina, what you could infer from this is, Zen Shimon that has benefit. And Reuben's not losing anything because anyways he had to fence in his fields. Chayiv. When you have benefit, you are obligated to pay even though the other person is not losing because Reuben had to fence it in anyway. But we see that we obligate you in the benefit that you're getting. Says there it's different because the Amalei says to him, you caused me that if not, in other words, that Reuben could tell Shimon, which Shimon's the guy on the inside, says, if not for your field amongst my fields, this is the way Rashi explains it, it would be enough with me, my outer fences, and all my fields would be fenced in.
So you're saying Reuben is asking Shimon to pay some of it?
Yeah, he has to chip in. Now,
why did he close the intersect?
Because between him and Shimon.
Even though Shimon couldn't care less.
You could tell him to walk into my field. Why did you fence them in? It's not Chayes Lewis.
No, but he has his kids.
You pay for it, but why would Shimon be obligated?
Regardless of the benefit, right?
What does
Right.
Shimon have?
He doesn't care.
Maybe he did it because Shimon has cattle.
But he doesn't care.
Oh, then if he has cattle, then he has a time.
Yeah, no.
Maybe
That's a nezek. He has to pay
Then
the
he has a
nezek.
time. No, but he doesn't want the nezek. He doesn't want the nezek in the paper.
That might be Tosfos' kasha on Rashi that Tosfos asks that he says it's only to separate between his and his fields versus the yeah, you're right. So Tosfos Taka gives a different shot because of that, but Rashi holds that it's necessary. Which that's the question. If you're surrounded on all sides, so who's it necessary for? It's not necessary for any one of them because from the elements on the outside they're protected from. But Akapan Rashi says that it is chaser for Ruvain because he says the inner fences that I made was because of you, and if that's the case, so there's no midas sedoim, and there's no raya to this halacha of zenene v'zelei chaser because it's not loy chaser, it is chaser. It's not just you're getting benefit; it's also that I'm losing over here. I have to make these fences because of you, and maybe that's why you'd be chayiv. So it's not a raya from over here, from these inner fences.
Has to be from Shimon? Shimon has to be mazik?
No, that's what we're saying. We thought we'd bring a raya. No, in the Chanami, we thought we'd bring a raya of a zenen and a zelei chaser that you could be mechayiv the inner guy because punk you're having benefit. You didn't cause me a loss. I would, and then the Gemara is answering, no, you caused me that I have to make this whole new fencing because you bought in the middle of my property, and therefore now I have to go ahead and make these expend $1,000 for the fences between the two of us. You have to go ahead and again, Tosfos disagrees, and he says it's going on the outer fences, and because your field's in the middle, my circumference is more. If your field wasn't here, it'd be smaller.
That's just a hedge.
So Tosfos says, so then because of your fields, I got to make a bigger circumference, and now you have to chip in for that. It's a Tosfos holds. So that's upon them. It's no raya to the halacha of zenan and b'zelei chaser. It says, okay, Tashma Matzori bring another raya from that same Mishnah over there. It says, Amar B'yesi, he says, Im Amar Nikaf. Now, let's say the middle field, the one who's surrounded, he gets up. Let's say the first guy who's on the outside, only surrounded on three sides. Now the middle guy goes, V'godes Ravis, he goes, and he makes the fourth fence. Now, as Rashi explains, he's obviously revealing his intention that he liked the fact that Reuven surrounded him on three sides, and now he just wants to get the job done and finish off the fourth wall. Then says the Mishnah, now you're gonna have to give now your portion with all the other three inner walls that Reuben made, because you just revealed your intention, you're pleased with that, and you wanted that. Okay. Says the Gemara, but time of the God the Nikav. The inference is only because the middle guy went and he made the fourth wall. Hamakiv, but if let's say if the guy on the outside, he went and he bought another fourth field by Shimon and he fenced it in, Pater, it sounds like that Shimon would be exempt. Okay. Shmamah, we refer from that as Zenen v'zelechasa Pater. Obviously, that wait a second, but Shimon in the middle is benefiting it. But Reuven on the outside is not losing anything because he went now, he bought a fourth field, and therefore he's closing it in. So you see that Zenen v'zelech chaser is going to be Pater. So on that set, meaning this is Rabbi Yossi, as Tosfos points out, it doesn't contradict what we just said before. Even the Rabbanan don't disagree. They only say because Ad Geram Tali Hakef Yasir, but they would agree with the principle, what the Gemara is trying to prove from over here. So the Gemara, no. So it sounds like a case of Zenen v'zelech chaser. So the Gemara Shani there is different because the Amalei, the Nikif, the Shimon, the guy in the middle, could tell him, L'didi Sagali b'netira barazuzah. To me, I would never have made a fence out of stone. To me, it would be enough with a fence made out of thorns that cost the zuz to separate between me and you. And therefore, it's not even zenena. Because what's zenena? I didn't need this. You made this whole like a wall of China over here.
That's a different question for me. The fundamental question, whether it was needed or not.
Right,
needed.
right. That sounds like
value.
in the Chanami. That's really what it sounds like the Gemara is really saying. That the reason why Rabbi Yossi was saying that only if the Nikav makes the fourth wall is going to be chayiv, but if he didn't and the Makav did, he would be Pater, is because he's saying? What's the zenena? I didn't need it. I didn't need this. We just have to separate the property line. So we could have just made like some thorns. It doesn't cost anything. And you're making this whole wall of China over here. So therefore, it's going to be Pater. So there's no raya that when you have zenena v'zelech chaser, you're going to be Pater because it's not a zenena. Not a zenena. Before we said it's not a leichaser, now we're saying it's not a zenena. Gemara says Tashma tried being another raya from Mishnah Bava Mitzia. Mishnah says habayis. If let's say the first floor apartment belongs to one person, Valia, and then you have the upper story, like in Century Village, old like these 2 floors usually, right? The one on top, one belongs to someone else, and it belongs to Shnaim of 2 people, Shanaflu, that it collapses. They call Penny, he comes running. Amar Balalia, so the person that lives on the second story tells the Balabais, tells the guy on the first floor, live nice. So build it so I can make my second story apartment. No, the guy on the bottom, he refused to. He's waiting for some government money. I don't know what he's waiting for. He refused to build. So what you can do is the second story apartment could build the first floor, the yeshiva, and he could live there until that he gets paid for his expenses that he spent for building this guy's first floor apartment. Oh, so obviously we see that the owner of the first floor apartment has to pay for the expenses for obviously his apartment being built, but haschari loy, meaning he cannot discount the rental that the second story apartment guy lived in his first floor apartment for those 10 months until he came and paid and kicks out the first guy that he could then build his upper story. Oh, Shmami, no, you see him. This is Zen. The second story apartment had benefit because he would have had to rent the apartment somewhere else. Now, this guy is not losing because, anyways, he didn't want to build. He's not losing anything. So we see Potter. We see the one who had benefit is Potter. So you brought a raya. Zen and Zelichaser is Potter. So no. There it's different because the base of Aliyah Mishtabit. It's not true. Because the first floor apartment has obligations to the second story apartment because the first floor has to tolerate and hold and contain the second story. So therefore, he has rights to live in your apartment because I need you to be here so that I can be there. If you're refusing, then it's your fault. It's not a case of just regular zenena v'zelechasa. Usually, maybe you'd be chayiv for zenena, but here he has a reason why he's allowed to be here, and if he's not going to be chayiv. Someone said, okay, Tashma, to bring another raya from that same Mishnah in Bava Metzia. Yomei, he says, he's coming to disagree with the Tanna Kama. He says, Avzeh. He says, no. Also over here, the owner of the second story, Hadar b'chatzeh chaverei, Shloime Daite, who's living, so to speak, in the courtyard of his friend without his awareness, Tzarech lahaus le'schar. No, he has to pay the second story apartment who built and lived in the first floor apartment. He's going to get paid back, but he's got to pay the rent to the homeowner for having lived there for those 10 months. Oh, Shmamah, what you see from Rabbi Yehuda is Zenen v'zelech chaser. This guy's having benefit. This guy's not losing because you didn't want to build. Chayiv, you can be chayiv. So there it's different. Because he's blackening his walls, and therefore it's going to be chaser. But all along, in the old apartment, you can't tell if someone was there for a weekend or not. But take a brand new apartment which was built, right? Because this upper story built the apartment again, spackled and whatever this and that, blackening the walls. It's considered chaser. Therefore it's going to be chayiv. But if it was an old apartment, it would be zenen v'zelech chaser. Maybe he would be potter. So it's no raya. The Gemara says, Shalchua be'Reb Ami. They sent this question that we mentioned before of zenen v'zelech chaser. What's the halacha to yeshiva Reb Ami? Ami said, "Was heißt? What do you do to him? What loss? This guy was living in an apartment that's not rented out. What did he damage him? And therefore he held you're going to be potter. What's the same good thing? He had a no, so what does that have to do with anything? What loss did he cause him? Therefore he's going to be potter. Chibur Abba, he says, no, this Yasha B'Dava. We have to look into this more. No, so how does Shalchu come into Rabbi Abba? So again, they sent the question. Rabbi Abba said he has to think about it. So they sent the question again. Amma says, "Kuli hasholchli vazi." They keep on sending me the question. You think if I would have found an explanation, I wouldn't have sent the answer? I don't have an answer yet. We learned Rav Kahana and Rabbi Yechanan. There's 2 different versions of what Rabbi Yechanan held. Rav Kahana said in Rabbi Yechanan, in the tzorch lahaus le'sachar. No, doesn't have to pay for him the rent for having squatted in his apartment that he anyways doesn't rent out. Avu Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Rav said in Rabbi Yechanan, tzorch lahaus le'sachar. He has to give him rent. Even though he doesn't rent out his apartment, he's not my type. I'm not cleaning up my house for someone to come and use my pesach. I don't need this business, right? But Lamaisa, if someone did, He's got to give the hana that he had. Amar Papa, he says, Hadar Bavo's version of Rabbi Yechanan that said that you're going to be chayiv, la befer shitman, was not explicitly that Rabbi Bavo heard this from Rabbi Yechanan. A machlal, he was inferring from a teaching of Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan held like this, which is, now we learn the Mishnah Masechtas Me'ilah, which the Gemara Masechtas Me'ilah explains. This Mishnah is talking about the Gizbar, the treasurer himself of Hektish. Notel Ebenai Kodesh al Hektish. If he takes a stone or a beam of Hektish, he's got the keys and he has access to all the items of Hektish. The treasurer takes it. Hariz Lemal, he has not committed Me'ilah misappropriation because it was always in his rishus. This is the fact that he took it from one storehouse to another place is not Me'ilah, it's not misappropriation. Nosle Chaveroi, he already gets a little bit more. He takes and he gives it to his friend. Oh, now his friend acquires it because the Gizber has the rishus to give things. And now he's removing it to chulin by giving it to a regular person. Now he committed me'ilah. Now he committed misappropriation. That's already treason. Now, so that their halacha is humal v'chavei lemal. So the one who committed me'ilah is the gizber, having given it over. But his friend didn't do me'ilah because the me'ilah was the misappropriation of the gizber giving it over to a regular person. Now, banov, let's say the treasurer himself builds it l'tech beisai. So now people have access to things, and suddenly you find out that the money was used to build his house. This gizber. So harizulay mal, it's not me'ilah yet. Until he lives beneath that beam, a value of a pruta. Now, Shmuel said, but this time if he put it on the skylight and he didn't make it fixed into the building, where you didn't do any change to the item, that's why there's no me'ilah until you live beneath it and you have some type of a benefit. But if you established it in the property, then right away it's me'ilah because you changed it, you did something to the hektish item. Now, this is the point. V'yasser Bavo Kama Daf. So Ravo, remember, he was the one that said the teaching name of Rabbi Yechanan. He was saying Rabbi Yechanan. Bava Kama Daf, he said in the name of Shmuel that Zaysemer, this tells us, in other words, from the fact that we learned that when he lives beneath it for the value of a prut is michayiv, even though he's doing this without the awareness of hektish, you learn the following halacha. If someone lives in his friend's court without his awareness, you see, he has to give him the rent, because it's the same thing over here. Without Hektish's awareness, he went and utilized it, and he's going to be chayav me'ilah. Now, B'shasik Rabbi Yechon was silent. He thought, when the shasik might live, from the fact that he's quiet, he was admitting to him. And that's why he quoted later on the name of Rabbi Yechon on this teaching, that, yes, says Gemara, it's not true. This is what he's trying to say, that it's not true, Rav Papa, because to the contrary, he was silent because he wasn't paying attention to him. Because Amar Rabba said hektish shalei medas. You cannot say hektish, this concept of shalei medas, because there's always the awareness of God, of the Shechina. So therefore, as we continue to talk about it's considered like a regular person with das, meaning because there's das of the Shechina. So in other words, you can't qualify this as this halacha of shalei medas, of like, okay, you're not losing anything because you weren't aware. It's not true. You always have the awareness of the Shechina, and therefore that's why there is going to be the halacha of me'ilah. It's not going to be a right to the halacha of zenen of zelechasa.
What if his
I can try anytime.